Hello my loves, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Kirsten and it's time for my October wrap up. Now this month I read quite a few books. I read 12 books, but my page count was actually really low compared to last month. I only read 4,292 pages this month compared to the 5,000 of last month, and I still struggled to even read that much. I don't know what happened. I think honestly the month just flew by and I just could not keep up. But overall I have had a really good reading month. I have read 5-star books, which was amazing. One of those was a reread, so I did know it would be 5 stars. That was my only reread for the month, but I had a lot of books that I was super excited to get to in this month. I also had 4 4-star reads, 2 3-star reads and 1 2-star read. No DNFs or no 1 stars, so that was a pretty good reading month overall. Again, like last month, I've been really lucky with the quality of the books that I have been reading. Generally overall been enjoying what I've been getting my hands on, so I'm very pleased and I definitely hope that continues throughout the rest of this year, which, considering we've only got 2 months left, should be fine. But as usual, I'm rambling. Let's get straight to the books that I actually read this month. The first book for the month that I had to read was Angel Mage by Garth, and this was my punishment book for not completing my September TBR. And boy was it a punishment. It was just not a book that I enjoyed. It was... Let's start at the beginning. So this is a book that I was excited to actually read, but just kept putting off because I wasn't really feeling it, so it came up as one of my punishment books. And the reason why I was so excited is because on the back of this it does say that it's a Lilith story, that Lilith is trying to bring back her angel lover, and to do this she is going to use 4 humans who don't know what's going on to fulfill her quest. Now the very start of this book was brilliant and I absolutely loved it because we're following Lilith's perspective, and she is this dark sorceress and she's able to call upon these angels without paying the consequences of it, because we're in a world where if you have an icon you can summon an angel, they will do your bidding and then they will leave, but in return you have to give up years of your life. But Lilith is able to do this. She's able to control the strongest among them without paying those consequences because of nefarious deeds that she has done. So I really loved that aspect of the book and it was highly interesting. However, after you get done with Lilith's perspective, it does change to our 4 human perspectives, and it constantly changes between those 4 as to the perspective that you're seeing, and that got really slow. It got really boring because I understood why, because we're setting up background to who these characters are, but I was really hoping it would get back to Lilith and back to why she was using them, how she has managed to do the things that she's able to do, because none of that was really explained. And it really still isn't. And then I'm halfway through the book getting really confused by it, so I decided to do a bit of research because I don't normally do that because I don't like to spoil books, and it turns out that this is actually a 3 Musketeer tribute. And I'm like, what on earth has the 3 Musketeers got to do with Lilith and angels? I was so baffled. I was really disappointed. The humour between the 4 characters was there, but nothing amazing, and it felt like it was trying too hard. I really couldn't get on with it, and then the ending was such a letdown with what happened with Lilith, and I was a bit like, oh, we've had this whole build up and that's all that happens. So this was my 2-star read for the month and not the best start to the month. It did take me a little while to actually read this because it's a bit of a chunky book and I really wasn't enjoying it apart from those first few pages because they were really good, and I think if we just focused on Lilith this would have been a much better book, but I think it was just a bit confused as to what this book was trying to do. As I was doing the Slayerfest readathon during the month of October, I had also used the Angel Mage for my prompt of being Willow, because that was her own character book that I had to read, which included witches, which, to be fair, Lilith was a mage, so it kind of loosely worked. Thankfully I was smart and knew that I may not like that book, and the next book on the Slayerfest TBR was Heir of Fire. Because this Slayerfest TBR you had to read in order, so I really wanted to make sure I had a book that I knew I was going to enjoy to read next, because I wasn't sure how I'd feel about Angel Mage, and I'm so pleased I did. This was my reread of the month. Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas is the 3rd book in the Throne of Glass series, and if you don't know what this series is, I'll be really surprised. It is a very hyped YA fantasy series following this main character called Selena, who is an assassin, and she has to overcome these series of trials to become the king's personal assassin, and the story goes from there, and I love it. Heir of Fire is one of my favourite books in the actual series. It's between this one and the next one, Queen of Shadows, because it's in this book we really start to see a change of pace, a build up to what is going to come, and we meet a lot of brilliant characters. One of my favourite scenes are in here, which is to do with Manon, who is a witch, and it's just an amazing book. So of course this was 5 stars. As I said, my reread was 5 stars. I knew this was going to be 5 stars, and I try and reread this series once a year because I love it so much. The only difference is this time I am taking it slower because I'm reading other books in between, and I'm enjoying that. It's really nice to take it slowly, to see everything that's going to happen and not get confused as to which book is which, because honestly the amount of times I've just binge read this, it does blur the lines between the books, and now I'm getting to appreciate each individual book in its entirety, which I think is amazing. And if you haven't read this series, I really do recommend it. I know some people don't like the first couple of books, but trust me, by the time it gets to Heir of Fire, it really is picking up pace, and Queen of Shadows, it's just full on. So yes, brilliant book. Sarah J Maas is one of my favourite authors. I've read every single thing that she's published and not been disappointed by any of it. I've just enjoyed her work. So yeah, if you haven't, please give it a try. Continuing on with my Slayerfest TBR, I then read Monstress Volume 2, and this is a steampunk horror graphic novel, and it's so good. I absolutely love this. The artwork in it is absolutely stunning. You can tell by the front cover, it's just amazing. It's all in these darker, earthier tones, but that really sets the atmosphere for the book. And we're following our main character, and she is a half-wolf. Now, in this society, we do have humans, but there is a sect among them called the Witch Nuns, who are trying to basically get hold of any half-breeds and torture them, because within them resides a power that they can use. And we also do have ascended, almost similar to godlike beings. They're basically full-blooded supernatural creatures, and they basically keep to themselves, but is now interested in the half-wolf, and the half-wolf has a demon trapped within her, and she's trying to find out her backstory to it. There's a lot of things going on, but I really enjoy it. It's a really well done story. The artwork is phenomenal, as I've said, and it really is a very gritty, dark graphic novel, so it's perfect for this time of year. And this little side character is absolutely delightful. She's half fox, and I love her to pieces. She adds a really good bit of humour to the story, and I just think she is adorable. I think it's a really, really good story. I just want to show you some of the artwork on here because it is just so good. This one on its own came out as 4 stars. I find it harder to give graphic novels higher than that at the moment because I haven't read too many of them, but I am really enjoying this series and cannot wait to continue with it. Then I continued on with my Slayerfest TBR, which this was a month-long readathon hosted by Brittany from the Continuing Chronicles, who I will have linked below. It was a fun one to do, but I do struggle with any readathon where you have to read the books in order because I am a mood reader even though I have a set TBR. The next one I read for that was Soul of the Sword by Julie Kagawa. This is the second book in a trilogy, starting off with Shadow of the Fox, and I love it. This came out as 5 stars. It was an absolutely brilliant read. This is a Japanese mythology inspired trilogy, and I love it. We are following Yumeko, our kitsune fox, who is tasked with bringing the dragon scroll to a sacred temple for safekeeping, and along the way she manages to enlist the help of a cage samurai, tricking him into believing that she is going to lead him to the dragon scroll if he takes her to this temple, without realising she's had it on her the whole time. They also pick up a little band of friends that they take along this journey, and I love it. Now, the first book ends on a bit of a cliffhanger and continues in this one, so I can't talk too much about the plot in this one, unfortunately, but I can say there is some amazing romance in this story, and it was really well done. It wasn't at the forefront, but it was there in the background, and it talked a lot about the pressure of society at that time, the honour amongst them, and I loved that. It was absolutely beautiful. One of my favourite romances I've ever read, to be honest, and it's not even a romance book, but it was just so well done. We also have a lot of talk about honour, not just to do with the romance, but just in general, as well as a lot of loss and heartbreak in this book, and some wicked anime fight scenes. Like, they were brilliant, if very, very gory, and it was just a brilliant book, very fast paced, and I definitely cannot wait to read the next one, because again, this one ended on a plot twist and I'm just like, oh my god, you guys, you've got to stop doing this. But it was really, really good, and I cannot wait to read the last one, and I predict that the last one is going to be 5 stars as well, because I've just enjoyed this trilogy so much. So if you do enjoy mythology, give this one a try, and even if you don't enjoy mythology but enjoy traveling stories with some humour, some love, loss, it's got everything, so give it a read anyway. Then I followed that with Malice by Gwynne, and this was a book my sister recommended for me to read. She had recommended Malice and Poppy War but said to start with Malice, and I love it. It's great. It's setting out to be an amazing epic fantasy series. It's 4 books long at the moment. I think it's finishing on 4 books, but I don't know. I haven't actually looked into it, but it's really, really good. Now, my sister did pre-warn me that the start of this is pretty slow, and it is, but it's slow in a way that I really like, because we are building up our characters and we're seeing them grow, and we're seeing the start of what is causing this god war to come. So we are in a world where we have men and giants as well as other beasts, and basically there are 2 gods, one for good, one for evil, and they're starting to rise again, and we have people caught on either side of this war, and you are just seeing the build up to it, and I think it's phenomenal. The character work is amazingly well done, and I felt really attached to each of them, and you can see that some of the characters believe that they're good but may not really be, and ones that believe they're bad may not be either. Everything's kind of twisted on its head. You don't know where it's going to go yet, which I love. And then we also have brilliant world building. This was world building that I can appreciate because it was not overdone in the descriptions. It was just really well done. I just, honestly, potentially new favourite author, potentially new favourite series. This is the sort of epic fantasy that I love, with a slow build up, build into something bigger. And it's just phenomenal. So this should be no surprise that it came out as 5 stars, because I did love every second of it. It was just something that you could feel the atmosphere building to this war, and by the end of it everything's gone to crap, and I cannot wait to see where it goes next, because it's going to be a painful book series to read, because it's very sad in places and there's not much happiness in it, but it's so well done. So I'm so thankful for my sister for encouraging me to read this, because it is brilliant. And if you haven't read it but do like epic adult fantasy series, then give this one a try. It's going to be an amazing one. Then the next book I finished was Beneath the Sugar Sky by McGuire. This was not for the Slayerfest readathon, but was just on my own TBR game, and I'm so pleased I picked this up. I had started the next book that I finished, but I wasn't really feeling it, so I took a break to finish this one, and I loved it. McGuire is doing a series called the Wayward Children series, and it's a series of short stories, and they're all about these children who end up in different worlds. So for example, like Alice, who ends up in Wonderland, we have these children who have been to different worlds, but we're seeing what happens when they have to come back to our world, and you realise that it's a sense of loss for them, because although the worlds that they went to may not be nice worlds, that they are quite cruel in places, they still found a sense of belonging that they've never found in our world, and that's a main theme throughout these books, is a sense of belonging, which I find is so poignant and amazing. I will say in each book McGuire does take the time to have something that she focuses in on. So in Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which is technically a prequel to this series, she focuses in on the importance of raising your children without trying to influence them with your ideals, allowing them to be themselves. In this one, it talks a lot about image and how people perceive you. It is heavy-handed, but it's less than 200 pages and it gets the point across, so I don't really mind it at all. This one is continuing straight after the events in Every Heart a Doorway. In Every Heart a Doorway we had a bit of a murder mystery going on, and I can't talk too much about the plot of this one without giving away what happens in Every Heart a Doorway. But it is really good. I really enjoyed it. Our characters go on a bit of an adventure. We have a new person that's just arrived at the school after being to her world, and we're just kind of seeing how she's getting on, and it's It's really, really good, and they're such short books that I do recommend picking them up just to give them a try, because they're not going to take you long to read, and I've loved them. And I just, honestly, this was another 5-star read. I had a really good week where I just had quite a few 5-star books, and it was brilliant, and this is definitely a series that I really love. At the end of reading one of these books, I'm always feeling so warm and fuzzy inside, because it's just so nice to see them finding their places that they belong. It's just lovely. Then I finished Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, and this is the book that I put down to read Beneath the Sugared Sky. Again, this was for my Slayerfest readathon, and I did enjoy this. But it was a bit disappointing because it started off phenomenally well. So in this story, we are following our main character, Stevie, who is attending this prestigious school, and the idea is that they can learn at their own pace. It was initially founded by this very rich gentleman in the 1930s, and something happened at the school. There was a series of kidnappings, a murder as well, and everything basically went wrong, but the school continued running. And Stevie gets accepted into it, and she's very confused as to why, because she doesn't feel she's particularly smart, but she is a crime freak. She absolutely loves trying to solve crimes. She's fascinated by them. She wants nothing more than to be an FBI, and Sherlock Holmes is her aspiration. She is a brilliant character. She's smarter than what she thinks. She's very witty, and I loved that, and I loved all the references to Sherlock Holmes in this book at the start. I thought it was really well done. We do get 2 timelines, so we do get what's happening in the 1930s, and we get Stevie in present day, because she is trying to solve the kidnappings from the 1930s. And I loved it. It started off really well, and it made me think that YA murder mystery is definitely a genre that I want to read more of, because I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, really enjoyed that duology, really enjoyed this. The only thing I'll say is it kind of lost itself halfway through, which I didn't really like, and I think that's more because Stevie was so focused on trying to fit in, feeling like she wasn't good enough, and just having a lot of insecurities, which is fair. You know what, we all go through that, we've all had insecurities. It's just, it meant that she wasn't focusing on why she was there. She wasn't focusing on the fact that she's amazing at what she does, and she's smart, and that she can do these things, and it was more just second guessing herself the whole time. And it meant that there were some chapters in this which I feel weren't personally needed. Also meant that I wasn't really that attached to any of the characters, so when a secondary mystery happens in this book, I wasn't that invested in it. I will continue on with this trilogy, but it ended up being a 4 stars, but it had the potential to be 5 stars from that starting chapter, which was a shame, and that's why I feel disappointed, because 4 stars is not a bad star rating at all. I definitely enjoyed it, but I did feel a bit disappointed because it started off so much stronger. So I found that one a wee bit disappointing, and then I followed it with another book that was even more disappointing, and again this was for the Slayerfest TBR, and where do I begin, guys? This is Court of Miracles by Kester Grant, and I had put this off from my September TBR, but said, you know what, I keep putting this book off, I've got no idea why, I need to just pick it up. And this was for the prompt of to read a book with my least favourite trope. Now, I don't have a least favourite trope, but I do have a tool that authors use that I don't like, and that's time jumps. Specifically, unnecessary time jumps. There were time jumps in Malice, but it was so well done you didn't even notice. It worked perfectly. The time jumps in Court Miracles, oh my god, there were so many. They literally came at you left, right and centre, and they were so haphazardly done that I couldn't connect with the characters. Let me start again before I start ranting. This is a Les Mis retelling, and it is set in the French Revolution, so it has got that bit right. However, considering this as a retelling, and retelling is like my favourite books to read, I was so disappointed with this book. It had so much potential, but the execution of it was really, really poor, and I was so disappointed in it. And it's mainly because there are so many freaking time jumps in this book. It was unreal. Literally every couple of chapters you've got another time jump, and it was just so frustrating. We're following our main character as her sister has been taken to the House of Flesh. She's basically been sold there by her father, so she joins the Thieves Guild for protection and vows to try and get her sister back. And that's supposed to be the purpose of this book. However, by the next couple of chapters she's already changed her mind, and instead of swapping her sister for the girl that she was initially going to sell to them, she then wants to protect her. But there's a massive time jump between the two, and so you don't see her meet this girl, you don't see her grow attached to this girl, you don't see any of that. You've literally seen her go from I want to save my sister to okay, I'm going to save this girl instead. And so it's a bit like, wait, what? And then we see her have to do this series of tasks that are supposed to be really difficult, but is able to complete them in the space of a chapter, so it really doesn't seem difficult. And then we have this whole thing where her friend gets taken and she's trying to get her back, and then we have the French Revolution part. Basically it was just really haphazard. There was so many things happening that it just did not make sense, and I feel if it had been done slower, if we had gone into things more deeply and not having so many time jumps, it would have been 100 times better. We would have been able to see her go through these tasks, see her do the difficult things for the Thieves Guild, rather than just being told, oh yeah, she did this. It's like, well, it can't be that hard then. You know, see her grow attached to this girl that she was initially going to sell in exchange for her sister. See that change of heart in her. I really feel like this should have been multiple books rather than just crammed into one book, and it's not even a long book, it's very short. And don't get me wrong, it was an easy read and I read it very quickly, but it was so fast paced you were just left confused with so much of it. Now I am under the impression that this is the start of a trilogy, but I feel like this should have been a trilogy on its own. It will be interesting to see where the next few books go. I may pick up the second book just to see what it's like, because again, so much potential, really liked what the author was trying to do, but just they needed to take their time and do it better, and it would have been amazing. Honestly, if they had just taken their time, it could have been a 5-star book easily. As it is, it came out as 3 stars because I just could not connect with any of the characters, could not follow the storyline. There were just too many time jumps for it to make sense, and everything that was supposed to be really difficult was resolved in the space of a chapter, so nothing actually felt high stakes, which is so disappointing. It is their first debut novel, so it's understandable that there's going to be a few kinks to work out, but I do feel like this could have been the trilogy on its own if they just took the time to segregate it properly and go through and really meet these guilds, really meet our characters, and just can you tell I'm a bit frustrated with this book, because I really am. There was so much potential. Then I followed that with a classic horror story, and that's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, and I really enjoyed this. It's only 70 pages long, so I only gave it 4 stars, and that's mainly because it's only 70 pages long. You don't have a lot to work with, but it was a really good story, and I really enjoyed reading where our classic stories have come from, because as we all know, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde has been in so many different adaptations. The tale has been twisted in many different ways, and it was great to see where the original story comes from, and I loved it. It's basically social commentary on the duality of man and dealing with what's good and battling with the selfish emotions that we all have inside of us, and I loved it. It was really great. I think it was brilliant atmosphere, really dark and gritty. It was just brilliant. We do get different perspectives in this book as we are building up to this story of Dr. Jekyll and this seemingly evil person called Mr. Hyde, and then the realization that the two are one in the same, and it was phenomenal. The last chapter was definitely my favourite because it's from Dr. Jekyll's perspective, and we see what caused him to try and do this, what happened, why he then could no longer control it. It was just so good, and I can definitely see why it's inspired so many people for generations, because this was phenomenal and has definitely made me want to read more classic books, not just in the horror genre but just in general, because this was phenomenal. And I do want to read where our stories originated from and see why it's inspired us and continues to inspire us for generations, and this one is definitely one I would recommend. It's 70 pages long, so if you're not sure if you like classics, because the writing style can be a bit off-putting because it is a bit more dense than what we're used to, definitely give this one a try. It's 70 pages long, it's got great atmosphere to it, it's really not that slow, and the language isn't that difficult to understand. It's really good, so this is a good one for anyone who's thinking about trying classics, because it is social and has a phenomenal story in it. Then I had a complete change of pace, going from a classic to a contemporary, and that was Meat Market by Juno Dawson. This is one I felt a bit conflicted with because it took me a little bit to read this. I read up to about the 150 page mark and I was finding it a bit of a struggle. It was really slow and I just wasn't that interested. We're following our main character who has been approached to become a model. And she's kind of like, wait, what, me? I'm not model material. But she agrees to it because she's like, you know what, it's good money, may as well do something. And she has no idea what she wants to do with her life, so she's like, I may as well give this a try. And so you see her slowly get into this world. I wish I hadn't put it down at the 150 page mark because then it really picks up and we get it from going very slow to suddenly full throttle dealing with all the things that you do in the model industry, and this is a very harsh look at the model industry. It looks at how they are penalised for how they look. So there are trigger warnings for bulimia, anorexia is a big thing in this book, so if those are your trigger warnings, please be careful going into this because it is everywhere. And then there's something that happens in this which is kind of like an event that sets off this coming together of females within the model industry to right a wrong. And it's really, really well done and I really liked it, and I like the formatting of this book as well because it's kind of like an interview and then our main character telling her story of why she became a model, how the things that happened and the result of it all. And I really, really liked it. It was a very poignant story. It's not one I would happily reread, I'll give you that, but it definitely deals with a difficult subject and handles it really well, I personally believe. I ended up giving this one 3 stars overall though, and that's mainly because contemporary is not my favourite genre. And so I can say that the characters were okay, very relatable. This story wasn't that intriguing though, and that's where it lost a lot of points because it's just not quite my thing. I find fantasy stories to be a lot more engaging, even murder mysteries, because you want to know what happens. In this, as I said, it did take me past the 150 page mark to actually be invested in this book. And like I said, it's not one I can say that I enjoyed because although it was well done and it dealt with some difficult subjects, I didn't enjoy reading it because it was a difficult read at times. Not to say I didn't like this book, because again I did, it's just I'm very in the middle about it. It was well done and I think it's got an important story to tell. I do like the occasional contemporary, so I will pick up the other one that Juno Dawson has done, which is Clean. But contemporaries are something that I wouldn't necessarily reread very often. I prefer to read for the aspect of being transported to a different world, not wanting to see the harsh realities of our world, which may be a very naive thing to say, but it's true. I think our world is harsh enough without having to read about it, but occasionally those reads are important, so I will read them every so often. But it does mean that they're never going to rank quite as high as a fantasy novel, if that makes sense. And then after reading Meat Market, I just gave up on the Slayerfest readathon. At that point I had read 9 books for the readathon. I had 2 prompts left to go, but I just wasn't feeling it. The next book was Good Girls Die First, which was on my own TBR game, but I wasn't feeling it. It's not one that I wanted to read. What I'd done is, because I had found Meat Market a bit difficult in places, I actually started to pick up The Damned by Renee Adhieh, and this is the second book after The Beautiful, and I really enjoyed this book. The Beautiful, I will admit, I prefer. I loved The Beautiful. I thought it had a brilliant decadent atmosphere to the story. It was really slow paced and I loved that. I loved the mystery that was in there and our main character Celine getting caught up in it and trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and I found it beautiful. That was not done on purpose. It was really a beautiful book. The writing was amazing, everything about it was a brilliant read, and it ended up being 5 stars. Now, I know a lot of people didn't like the fact that the vampires were not prominent in the book, but they are there, and you can definitely tell that they're there, at least I can, considering that there was a chapter about ripping out someone's throat. But even that, even the violence aspect of it was done in this really beautiful lyrical way, which I adored. The Damned is very different. I really enjoyed it. I still like our characters, but it was a complete change of pace. We went from this slow, almost like seducing you build up to literally having every supernatural creature you can think of thrown in your face. Like, it was full on. There was no let up. The writing was still lovely, but I didn't feel it to be as beautiful and lyrical as it was in The Beautiful, which is a bit of a shame because that's one of the things that I loved most about it, and the atmosphere build up, which you just didn't quite get in this book. We also don't have much of Selene in this book. We actually mainly have the perspective from Bastien, which I liked, but it also explains why you get so many supernatural elements thrown at you, because he is the one that's in the midst of it. Then we have a bit of a plot twist in this book, and it goes even more faster from there. It ended up being 4 stars, mainly because I missed the slower build-up of atmosphere. And that was a shame for me because that is what I loved so much about The Beautiful. I still enjoyed the story. I will still carry on with this series. It's just I wish it had been done a little bit slower, just taken its time a bit more, and just... it was a shame. The Beautiful is going to be one of my favourite books for a long time. I absolutely loved everything about it, and I had really high hopes that The Damned was going to continue on with that feeling, but it didn't. It was very different. Like I said, still enjoyed it. I still love our characters. I think they're really well done. It was very interesting to see this different world that Selene and Bastien that have all got caught up in, so that was really interesting. It's just, it was missing that atmosphere, which stopped it from being that 5-star read for me. And then the final book I read for the month is only one short story within this bind up, and that's Edgedancer by Brandon Sanderson. And Edgedancer is 2.5 in the Stormlight Archive, but I actually read the 3rd book first because I didn't realise Edgedancer was a thing. I loved it though, it was brilliant. It's only 130 pages long, so although I can say I finished another book, again it was another short story, but it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. I loved everything about our main character, Lift. She is a side character within Stormlight Archive, and you saw a couple of chapters from her perspective, but not too many. And it was really nice to get a dedicated novella to her because she is a brilliant character. She's really funny. She's got a really interesting backstory that you're still trying to work out from this book, which I loved. And it was nice to see Brandon Sanderson go more into who she is as a character, what her powers are, and what she believes in, what she stands for. It was really well done. We also get some social commentary in this, which is pretty common for Brandon Sanderson. I think he does it really well though, so it's not too in your face, it's just woven through the story, which I loved. And this did make me laugh out loud in places, and it was just... it makes me want Rhythm of War so bad. Like, I cannot wait for this. Brandon Sanderson is again another author who I really love his work. Admittedly, mainly just the Cosmere works, but I do think his Cosmere books are phenomenal. And again, if you want a good epic fantasy series, then I do suggest the Stormlight Archive. Though go into it, it is an adult epic fantasy series. It is a bit confusing. There is so much information thrown at you, and these books are huge, but they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. And if you're not quite ready to step into that, then give Mistborn trilogy a try, because that's kind of between adult epic fantasy and YA fantasy. It's a good bridge. They're still big chunky books, but it's a little bit more manageable than the Stormlight Archive. But it was really good. It was a good way to end the month. So that's it. Those are the 12 books I read for the month. As I said, overall a really good reading month. A couple of books that were a wee bit disappointing, which is a shame, but overall a brilliant month. Now, actually, I did want to say the book of the month ended up being Soul of the Sword for me because I just loved it so much. And like I said, the romance, the humour, everything in it was brilliant. I loved the found family aspect of it, and it was amazing. So out of all the books that I read this month, I do suggest the Shadow of the Fox trilogy the most because I definitely loved that second book. But do let me know what your favourite book from October was and how many books you managed to read. I'd be very interested. If you've done a wrap-up video, again, let me know because I would love to give those a watch. And as always, if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. All my social media, links to my Instagram, Goodreads and Twitter will be linked below, and I will catch you in the next one.